Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of eTalks. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Lyra Stein, an associate teaching professor of psychology at Rutgers University. She is renowned for her engaging and innovative teaching. Dr. Stein has transformed large lecture settings into dynamic, collaborative learning spaces. Her passion lies in making psychology relatable and inspiring through active learning, technology, and real-world applications. With numerous accolades for her dedication, including the Social Learning Award and being a teaching fellow. She also explores how media and storytelling shape our understanding of mental health. I've had the privilege of being in two of her courses about a year ago, Abnormal Psychology and Psych Theories Through Film. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Stein to eTalks.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here on this innovative platform that you have.
Thank you. We're so happy to have you here today. So, what is your topic for today?
My topic, since I teach so many students, is how to find value in your education. I find and usually at the beginning each semester, I come into my classes and I see students, they're just sitting there eating to each other, book, or they have their headphones on. And I can tell from the start that they're not engaged and they don't expect to be engaged during the semester. So in my courses, I try to emphasize the value of having an education, of being able to explore your strengths throughout college, and how to get the most out of your education. And it seems that over the years, I've noticed a change. Most students see college as just something to get through with the highest GPA that you can. And I try to articulate to them that once they graduate, no one's going to care if they got an A or a B plus in a class. And so in my courses, I try to cultivate the skills that they will need after they graduate rather than just throwing content at them and asking them to regurgitate it in memorization and multiple choice exams. I really want them to learn how to think critically and learn the skills they'll need to be employable after they graduate.
Yeah, definitely. As a student, I feel empathy for that situation. Some courses, I mean, me personally, I value education a lot. I also want to see more of something than just getting an A, but also learning, especially when it's my major, especially when it's something I want to pursue long term. I value every single thing that, the teacher says that's part of the curriculum. But yeah, you have had experience with perhaps thousands of students. Just I'm imagining all like the frantic emails you get asking for extensions because some crazy stuff are going on. I've been one of those students, I'm sure too, asking for those extensions. But yes, I'm sure that you have a lot of experience from difficulties that students experience in college.
Yeah, I teach on average maybe 1,300 students a semester, usually across 5 different courses. So, yes, I get a lot of emails. I would say 50 to 100 a day, depending on the day. But it is my passion, and I am dedicated to making sure that students have the right experiences in their classes. And I think the beginning of my classes, students realize that they can't just take the exams or come in and do work for another class or listen to music during class because I do require their active engagement and collaborative learning. And I know a lot of students, when they hear group work, they moan. They don't. Uh, um, and I tell them this is what, if you get a job in the United States, you are going to be expected to collaborate with other people. You may not like the people you collaborate with. And I used to do random assignment of groups, but I've changed that. Recently, I allowed students to form their own groups. However, many students don't know other people
Yeah.
in the class, so it does end up being somewhat random. And I say, you are going to have to learn to deal with different types of people, different personality types, different levels of motivation. And this is where you'll learn to do it. I tell them it's a dress rehearsal for real life. And that's what college should be. College shouldn't be what's the least amount of work I should do to get the grade I want, because it's not going to hold up once you graduate. And I feel like grade school does not adequately prepare students for college, and especially not for life after college. In grade school, there's so much focus on only achievement and the grade you get and your GPA and achievement tests. And that's not what life is about. So I find that many students are just ill prepared for college and the real life. And when I ask students, we have this conversation a lot in my classes. What do you wish you had learned in grade school to better prepare you for college? And they all say the critical thinking, because grade school, it's just grades. Can I cram the night before and get the grades I want? And that's what they learn, and that's what they expect when they come to college. Now, some classes are like that. I'm involved in a lot of teaching related intensive workshops. And I work with professors from biology and chemistry and organic chemistry. And that is really their model. How much content can you memorize and give back to me on an exam? And during these workshops and seminars that I attend, we talk about whether that has any use. And it really doesn't. And as I talk about, I teach a class on soul beliefs, and we talk about how the human mind works. The human mind is not made for memorization. Studies have shown that chimps outperform Harvard undergraduates on memorization tasks. And that is not what our mind is made for. Our strength, first, is critical thinking, and second, collaboration. We never would have survived if we didn't learn to collaborate with each other. And I try to get students to acknowledge that those skills are important. It's tough. You still have those students. I want the A, give me the A. I'm not going to come to class. Um, so I design my courses so students do have to attend class. Um, they have to attend for the discussions, but I also have in class open-ended questions where they're allowed to work with, this is what it's going to be like after graduation. After graduation, their boss isn't going to give them a multiple choice Scantron exam saying, would you memorize? So I try to design my courses like the workplace, like deadlines and assignment experience they graduate.
Yeah, critical thinking and collaboration. Definitely two questions that, I mean, critical thinking, that's a term us students probably hear from middle school on, always these posters in our school hallway saying, critical thinking, steps to do it. I guess maybe because it's such a word that we're so used to hearing all the time, we really lose the value behind it. And, collaboration as well. You were the first professor who I've had in a 200 person lecture who said, we're going to do group work. I was like, what? Group work in this setting? And you did it so well. I was so surprised, and I mean, it interests me how you're so encouraged to, you could be like maybe any other professor who goes in, has their PowerPoints, does their thing, and just leaves at the end of the day, but you always aim to do more. And I wanted to ask where does this passion come from?
So I was during the pandemic, I was remote for 2 years, 2 years. And it was awful. Students didn't like it. I didn't like it. So I came back in the spring of 2022, and compared to the fall of 2019, it was completely different. Students were so lethargic, they didn't want to do anything, especially after all that time of just logging on to the computer for their classes. They just had no motivation and they weren't interested. So during the summer of 2022, Rutgers offers a Teaching Excellence Network intensive workshop on how to transform your courses. And I transformed my very large courses into active learning courses, which is difficult with smaller groups. And my advisor said it was very ambitious to try this in a class of 300 students. And I was so nervous when I first started doing this. And I had to modify what I did when I first started. I had 10 people in the group and there was no accountability and it didn't work very well. So I've learned over the past few years to do it. And each semester I tweak it a little just to make sure that it's running as smoothly as it can. And now I implement a group session where the students get to know each other, and they have to rate each person's performance after the group, anonymous surveys. It takes me a while to set all of that up and go through it for every single student, but it gives me insight into what is going on in the group. And I make it so the preparation for the group work depends on other students doing their part. So I had some incidents where one person in the group wouldn't do it, and everyone in the group would tell that person, I can't do my part until you do yours. And they learn quickly accountability and responsibility and time management to get their part done in time for the group to be able to do their part. Even colleagues and my advisors in the intensive workshop said this is a very large undertaking, and I don't really have help. I have a graduate TA who really doesn't do anything, and I have undergraduate TAs who can't grade undergraduate work. So it's mainly on me. So I spend a lot of time organizing this, making sure it runs smoothly and doing the grades, but it's my passion. And the feedback I get is mostly favorable. Of course, you have the people that don't want to attend and they don't like being forced to attend. But it's so gratifying to me to see how students change over the semester. They become more accountable. They learn these skills that they'll need after they graduate.
Yeah, definitely. I found it was one of those gratified students. In the beginning, I was like, "Whoa!" So, this is a group work. That's kind of, extra effort, I guess. I was kind of scared by that. But I was very pleased too. And it is a nice opportunity to make friends too, which I know most college students sometimes have a trouble making, especially in their first years. And mo your courses like that were more foundational courses too. So I found that very gratifying. It was a gratifying experience. I'm going to jump a little back and forth. I was really excited, so I wanted to ask this question first. But going back, you said students usually aren't prepared enough in grade school. So if for maybe our potential grade school students who are perhaps preparing for college or even freshmen too, maybe if it's not too late for them, how would you recommend that students can be better prepared for college?
I First of all, it's mainly how to study. And I don't like using the word study because I don't make students in my class memorize anything. So I like to call it preparation. All of my assessments are online and it's specific to course material. And because it's online, most students don't think they need to prepare. But we go through how to prepare, how to understand the concepts, how to write them in your own words so that you understand them. So I use a an in-class response system where they're allowed to work in groups. It's called Top Hat, and they have to articulate to me their understanding of the concepts. So they're not memorizing, they're not copying and pasting, they're talking to the students around them. And I usually have students sit in their groups, even when we're not having discussions, so that they can talk to each other. And it's interesting because I ask feedback on the group activities, and students usually give me feedback on how well their group members contribute on non group days when I ask questions and they have to talk to each other. So I want students to know that in college, it's not just memorization. And I know they do a lot of that in high school, but you're really going to have to learn how to understand, how to be able to write the concepts in your own words so that you can relate to your instructors that you really understand it rather than regurgitating something back that someone has said. Also, time management. I know when I was in high school, I didn't study much. I didn't do much of anything. And, during lunchtime, I would look through my notes, and that's the way I prepared for assessments. And when freshmen get to college, and I know I was like this, the first exam I took in college, I got a C and I was blown away. I was thinking, what's going on? I never got C's before, and I had to fundamentally change how I thought about education, how I thought about how to um, communicate to my instructor that I understood the material. And so it was like a cognitive shift. It was no more cramming right before, see how much I can remember, but it was more how much could I understand. And once I did that in college, I was sort of dismayed that I never did it in high school because I was thinking, how much more I could be prepared for my college classes if I really understood what was going on in high school. I would also say I gave a talk for high school instructors once, and they use words like have a growth mindset and self actualization and optimism. And these terms really don't mean anything until you really understand what they mean. I walked into my daughter's school once and there was a sign, have a growth mindset. And because of the research I do, I know you can't just tell someone to have a growth mindset. It has to be for a specific task, which the individual can achieve, but is somewhat challenging. And even the person who coined it, Carol Dweck, says that it's not being used the right way in grade schools, just with signs saying have a growth mindset. And even in organizations, they use these catchphrases, which they think will motivate people, and many times it doesn't.
Yeah. Definitely. You're saying that, and I remember that exact have a growth mindset poster in my high school hall. Yeah. And so you speaking of, mindset and goals, perhaps, could you tell us a little bit about how a student should set goals for themselves, things that are both achievable? You could tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I want to start off by, and this goes back to a lecture I give in one of my courses. Um, so I ask students what makes them happy. And today it's usually notoriety and money. Actually, once I was giving a talk to kindergarten children, and I asked them what they wanted to be when they grew up. And, I was thinking doctor, whatever. They wanted to be a social media influencer. That was their goal. And I'm thinking, okay, this has to change. So students come in and maybe they want to go into the medical field because of status, because of the anticipated salary. And for them, and especially in the United States, it's all about money. And they're thrown into this society with social media and all of these influences telling them you have to have the right job, you have to have a certain salary, you have to have a certain house, and so on. And that will make you happy. Well, studies have found out it doesn't. So I see so many students who go into medicine, not because they want to, but they're told that will give them status, that will give them money. And they don't like it. They don't even do well in these courses, but they think because they've been told for so long you can achieve anything if you try hard enough, which isn't the case. You have to align it with your strengths. So I tell them the secret to happiness is choosing goals that are meaningful to you. Now, I don't expect college students to know which goals are meaningful to them in their early 20s. I don't expect them to know what they actually want to do. I had several different occupation changes before I went into psychology. That's another thing I tell them. Most likely, you won't be doing what you think you'll do. You're still young. And I find it daunting for students to have to tell the world what they want to do in their early 20s, really before they've had a chance to explore. But then I say, make sure you choose the right goals. Make sure you have tried out different areas. Make sure they are meaningful to you, not to society, not to your parents, not to your culture, but to you. Because you cannot find happiness by achieving someone else's goals or what someone else tells you is the meaning of success. And I know it's hard for students to comprehend this because of all of these influences they've had in their lives, and kindergarten saying, I want to make lots of money, being a social media influencer. It's hard to navigate that change. And they'll find out once they graduate and they get into the world and they try out different identities, really. I didn't get my PhD until I was 40. I was doing many other things. I just had a student email me saying, is it okay if I don't go to graduate school right after I graduate. I said, it's perfectly fine. You can go back anytime you want, but make sure it's something you really want to do. And make sure you figure that out for yourself. Don't have other people tell you what's important to you.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. Finding those meaningful goals that are important to us, not to, our parents, to our culture, to our society, which could often put a lot of pressure on students. But when I think of this, I always think of these two issues, it's one is the low income students, perhaps, who haven't had the opportunity to think about what they wanted to do. Maybe they say, oh, I want to be a musician, but they have to put, food on the table perhaps for their family. So that's one type of student, or another type of student, which is someone who does have the opportunities, but they haven't discovered themselves yet, or they're just like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I have no interests, I have no hobbies, which is we see, I believe, with the case with the younger generations today, with so much content that's being fed to us. And I see it in myself too, as well as my younger sibling. It's hard to go out of our way to find out what we truly love. So I want to ask you what these two different types of students could perhaps do to find these meaningful goals.
Oh, definitely. That is a great question. Obviously, we have to put food on the table. So, what I'm referring to is the lofty goals. I want to make lots and lots of money right away. So, I'm going into this area. I'm not saying don't get a job. We all need to have an income. And I know after I graduated, I needed an income. Um, I thought it was what I wanted to do. But after having a job in one area, I realized it wasn't. And that changed my mindset. It's not don't get a job, just explore, but really think about what you want to do. Even if you have a job that doesn't address exactly what you want, you still have time. You're in your 20s, you can change careers. I've changed it a few times. I've gotten jobs in different areas. But really, don't strive to do something that you don't like because other people told you to. And the other one, I find so many students, they just don't know what they're interested in. They seem very listless. I see a lot of what people call doom scrolling taking up a lot of their time. And yeah, I try my hardest to inspire them. And I've come to the conclusion that some students I just can't reach. And even though I try, but I think that well-being would be increased if there was a cognitive shift. Not, well, I just have to go to college. I just want to get through it as, quickly as possible, not do much, and shift that to, okay, look at these opportunities I have to take courses in different areas. And who knows which of these areas I'm going to enjoy. And I suggest to all freshmen take at least one class in a different major. All of your classes should be in a different major so you have a chance to understand what's out there and what you may like, even though you come in with a preconceived notion of what you want to do. And I can tell you, I write maybe over 100 recommendations for graduate school, medical school, law school a year. And most of their personal statements start out with, I never thought I would be going in this direction. So, college is a time for you to discover. And it's not something you just need to get through. Yes, you need to be employable. And that's why I work on skills. I have senior auditors in my courses. These are people over the age of 62, and they can take courses for free at Rutgers. And they participate in the groups and they say, I can't believe it. One of them ran an accounting company. And he said, I would never hire someone just based on their GPA. I want to know the skills that they have. I want to know the experiences that they had that they can contribute to my organization. He said, you won't believe how many C average students I hired because they had the skills I'm looking for. So he would tell me in this group, oh, this student's just worried about the A. They don't understand that that is not going to be marketable after they graduate. And I want my students to be successful. And that's why I think they need to have something to put on their resume. Look, I did collaboration, I did critical thinking. This made me be manage my time and multiple deadlines. I always have multiple deadlines in my courses. And if someone misses a quiz, I say, oh, where do you list all of your quizzes so you know when they're due? And they say, well, I don't. And I said, this is a skill you will need to be marketable after you graduate. I hear from so many employers that they're unhappy with recent graduates. First, they mention communication. And that's why I require in-person communication. I know you all communicate virtually. That's why I don't, I tell you, you have to be there in class. You can't just, get on the Google Doc because it's important to know how to communicate with people in person. We had the virtual and people went back in person because we need each other. We like to be around each other. Well, most people do. Even if you have a remote job, you will have to learn how to deal with people in person. It may be for a short period of time, but you're going to have to know how to do it.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that question. What were those skills that are important for students, to watch out for during college so they could be better prepared for the workforce? Thank you. Those I took note of those too for myself personally to see if the activities that I do in college or my courses, if they supply me with the sources to develop myself in these skills. Did you have any other strategies you'd like to share with us regarding, student success?
Um, yeah, well, I go in and I say, think about the money you're spending on your college education. Are you making the most of that monetary value by not going to class, not doing the work, and just wanting to graduate as quickly as possible? And I ask them to think about return on investment. What do you want to get out of your college education that makes the astronomical price of college worth it? And I really ask them to think about it. Think about the money they're putting in and what they think would be an equitable achievement afterward. And I try to get them involved in internships and experiential learning because that's something they can put on their resume. The student that just goes to large lecture courses, gets A's, B pluses, really has nothing to write down when they go into the job market, even graduate schools. I've been on graduate admission committees. You know, GPA is such a small part of what they look at, but there's so much focus on it. I think this has come from grade school.
Yeah.
Um, and I also tell my students to be realistic. And I know that there's in grade school, there's a focus on optimism. And there was this whole self esteem movement in the 80s, in the 90s, and the early 2000s. Just be proud that you are who you are. And it comes from a great place, but the outcomes have been disastrous. because students think that they don't need to do anything, that, hey, I should just have self esteem for who I am. And they don't even try. And it's backfired when you're told to be proud of yourself for not doing anything. And it's not motivating. So I try to tell students that grade schools have got this in the wrong direction. Yes, there's a correlation between self esteem and achievement, but it's actually the achievement that uh, that gives you self esteem. And it's being realistic about your abilities. Find something that you're good at that's meaningful to you. And don't follow these narratives that you have to have a high status job. Yes, you have to put food on the table. And there are many ways to do that that can be fulfilling for an individual.
Yeah, thank you so much. I truly hope, all students find their path, where they're both happy and both motivated and inspired and make that college money worth it. Those opportunities. It's something that I think most of us take for granted. We think we're so busy with schoolwork and everything's crazy. And I do know many students, who are very active too. But it's definitely something that we should make the most of. After this, it's probably only going to get more responsibilities. So it might be hard to see it, but I hope really, really, truly hope that all of us could see the worth in college. My first semester too, I did, as you said, I took like one course from all of the different fields that I was interested in, from astronomy to law, psychology. And yeah, it truly did help me come to where I was. So I do hope that all students, get to share the same experience and take advantage of those opportunities. Thank you so much, Dr. Stein. This was a wonderful episode. Was there anything else that you would like to add regarding this?
So if I can, I have a fellowship now to integrate generative AI into my classes, because most students view it as something to cheat with.
Yes.
So I want to teach them how to use it and how to make the most of it, because that is something that they will be using in their whatever field they go into. They will be using it. So I teach all of my students how to use it, and I teach them how to compare what we've talked about in class to AI output. So there's this misconception that everything that comes out of generative AI is correct. And we know it isn't. So I have them compare what we've talked about and talk about the biases that you know, generative AI is just probabilities of things that will come next based on what's been fed into it. And if it has experienced its initial information is biased, it will produce that bias. And I've seen it definitely in the field of mental health. It's definitely not accurate and it is biased. So I tell my students, prove to your employer that you have the critical thinking over and above generative AI, that you can show them that they need to hire you instead of just going through AI, that you know how to use it, that you know how to critically think about it. And I have some students who are so resistant. They say, I don't want to use it at all. And I tell them, most likely, almost everything you do after you graduate, you will have to know how to use it accurately and responsibly. So now my major focus is on teaching them appropriate use and how to, again, here's the critical thinking. Your employer is going to want you to know that you know how to evaluate the output, that you're just not going to copy and paste it.
And how would you advise us to think more critically with AI, what AI gives as a response to us?
Um, so I think there's this general conception with college students, I don't need to go to class. I'll just get it on Google, or I'll just get the information on ChatGPT, which is the free platform that I have students use. And they don't realize that what comes out of it is not correct. They just think, well, there's no need for me to go to class anymore. I'm just going to use generative AI. I would say you have to evaluate the output. You are going to be wrong if you think you can just copy and paste it. And there are several studies on the inaccuracies, the misinformation, and the bias that comes out of generative AI. So I would say you have to read it, think about it, pay attention to what your professor said. And that's what I do in my final paper. I want you, my students, to compare what we've talked about in class. So you have to attend. That's another topic, attention deficit. And then you have to put that into generative AI and critically think about how accurate it was, what the misconceptions are, how this can shape culture, these misconceptions, if we keep taking them as being valid.
Yeah, definitely. I do use AI too, not for my courses perhaps too, because as you said, it's very risky. You know, the responses, if that's it's sometimes more effort trying to understand decipher if it's accurate, if it's not. Either way, especially for papers too, if I were to ask it something, sometimes I ask just to get an idea, so I could take that information and search to see find the findings myself if it's actually accurate. Which is interesting for a professor's take, who says use AI, but use it responsibly. You don't hear that often.
I use it every day. I use it for almost everything, but my knowledge base is broad enough that I can determine. I was doing asking it for a literature review, and it made up different references. Um, and I have the knowledge to know that they were made up, but I think students need to be educated that you just can't take the output as truth.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Dr. Stein. There was wonderful things I hope that all of us students take note of, and try to incorporate into our efforts. Before we wrap up, I would like to ask you the questions that we ask all of our eTalks participants.
Sure.
One is, what is your favorite color?
My favorite color is purple, and I always have some purple nail polish on. So, and my roots are purple. So,
Amazing.
yeah, it's obvious.
Great. And our next question, which I think you will have an interesting answer for, is what is your favorite film?
Okay, so I can't narrow it down to one. I have to say one of my favorites is The Dark Knight in the Dark Knight series, the first one. And I show that in my film course. I think the second one is Shawshank Redemption. It's the highest rated movie on IMDb. Um, and I think it's worthy of that. It's really, it's a good psychological movie about hope. And then I Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. What if you can augment your memory? Would it make you a different person? Can I
Wonderful.
mention some of my favorite series?
Of course.
Okay, so I love Breaking Bad. And I use it as an example in my personality class just to see the transformation of personality across the series is amazing. And I think it's great for the analysis of personality change.
Yeah, Breaking Bad. Good. That's good. All of these, we make a list of it. So, eTalks, our eTalks members, and Agwan Art and Academy, the parent organization, we have our film list. So, all of these film recommendations we add to our film list. And it's important to watch critically too. So these are wonderful examples, especially from a psychology professor to watch all of these films and series from a psychological perspective. Definitely adds more depth to these as well.
Oh, great.
On, what is your favorite book or books?
Okay, so if we're talking academically, my favorite book is An Unquiet Mind by Kay Jamison, and it's about a psychologist who suffers from bipolar disorder. It is such a great description of the it's entertaining, and it shows you the obstacles and what someone with the disorder goes through. If I'm talking leisure reading, I am a sci-fi fan. So maybe like Ender's Game or Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I have a friend who loves the series for Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Oh,
Galaxy.
it's great. It is.
And our last question is, what do you see the role of art in your life, or how do you see the role of art in your life?
Oh, I think if we're defining art by creativity, I think cultivating as an instructor is a kind of art. It is. What creative ways can you find to prepare individuals for the world? Also, in the film course, how does media dictate cultural norms? How does it convey misinformation? And don't get me started on social media and people diagnosing themselves and um, just what people are exposed to may not be reality. Just to have them understand that.
Yeah. And I think films, like you said, is the epitome of manipulating or, the reality, how you see reality.
Exactly.
You could,
Yeah,
in one film, you could be rooting for the villain, while in the other, you're feeling bad for the protagonist. It's crazy.
exactly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stein, for, giving time for us to have you here today. It was very, very, very informational and very helpful. And I also believe it was very inspiring. And I hope all students benefit from this, from professors like you. I want to thank you as your student too, for being a professor who values the education of students. It truly values the education of students, putting in extra time and extra effort for us to better, be successful both in college and afterwards. Thank you very much for that and for being here tonight.
That means so much to me because that's what my passion is. And when students like you say things like that, that's the ultimate feedback, that what makes it all worth it.
Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much.